What's up guys, this is the Dragon King. If you did enjoy this video, like, share and subscribe and comment down below. Now let's begin this new video.
Miss Yan and Yan Hao were on their way to the ancestral inheritance in the last video, but the ancestral inheritance pushed them back. Yan prepared to kill them by taking out an elixir and cultivating, and Miss Yan told the hero to kill Yan Hao, but before Yi Yu could kill him, he awkwardly jumped, and the sword slit his neck, and he died. The hero was taken aback by how quickly he dispatched Yan Hao. Miss Yan was struck by the tripod, and Yi Yu approached her with worry. But before he could go any closer, he was hit by the tripod and returned to the three reincarnations. Miss Yan had gotten the ancestral inheritance, and Yi Yu was aware of this. When Yi Yu spotted the golden scroll, he reached out to see what it was. And the scroll accepted him. Miss Yan, meanwhile, was converging her spirit energy. Miss Yan gave him a book, and he recognized that he could learn how to absorb spirit energy with this opportunity. Now, let's begin this new video. The old man looked at Yan Hao's body, and he realized that he was dead. He approached Miss Yan and asked if she had received the ancestral inheritance. Miss Yan smiled and opened her eyes, telling him that she had received the ancestral inheritance. The old guy was overjoyed as he declared that the Yan family would rise. With a mischievous smile, the hero informed the old man that it was not him who received the ancestral inheritance and inquired as to why he was happy. The old man was startled when he heard Yi Yu's voice. The old man instantly turned around, and Yi Yu followed Miss Yan. The old man and the disciples all looked at him with a killing intent and asked Miss Yan for the sake of their reputation that the protagonist must die. The hero was speechless after hearing this. Miss Yan with the serious face told them to let him go. But the old man didn't listen, and he used his technique as he shouted that this was for the Yan family and told him to go to hell. But before the onslaught could happen, Miss Yan stopped the old man and told him they couldn't bite the hand that helped them. Yi Yu had a small grin in his face as he yelled that they had given him no choice. And with a fast movement, he grabbed her neck, and the old man's second attack was already too late to do anything. The hero gritted his teeth in wrath, and the old man's eyes widened in disbelief. Miss Yan was stunned since she couldn't do anything but stand there stunned. All of the disciples were stunned and silent. Yi Yu smiled bitterly and began to agitate the old man, asking him whether he wanted Lady Shunting to die with him. The old guy yelled at the hero to let go of her and threatened him that if he didn't, he would murder him without mercy. Yi Yu laughed and said he could do worse. He kissed Miss Yan as he moved her head towards him, and she widened her eyes in surprise. In horror, the old men's eyes expanded, practically bulging out of their sockets. All of the disciples yelled at him for kissing Lady Shunting. He begged Yi Yu to stop, and he cursed as he told himself that he had to kill him. They also broke the kiss. She blushed as she labeled him a jerk, and Yi Yu only smirked. He hugged her from behind and announced that they were now formally married. What's the big deal? After all, they were married. He asked the old guy. The elderly gentleman was rendered speechless. Lady Shunting was flustered as she yelled at Yi Yu to let her go and threatened to punish him if he did it again. The old man gently instructed Yi Yu to let her go, and he pledges to let him depart safely. Yi Yu was wearing a little grin. He wondered if he could go securely, knowing full well that the old man will not do so. Yi Yu informed him that he used him as a shield in the first place, and that they are now attempting to kill him numerous times. He cursed him and pointed the sword at him, asking if he thought he'd believe his nonsense vow. Snow began to fall from this location, and Yi Yu asked, "Why does it snow here?" The old man's terror erupted, and his eyes shone blue as he warned him that he couldn't be trusted, but that he was only stalling for time. Miss Yan screamed in frustration, and Yi Yu glanced at her with interest. And he begun to freeze from his feet, hand, and hip. Yi Yu was amazed and shocked that he couldn't move. Miss Yan inquired, alarmed, as to what was going on. Yi Yu is frozen by his spiritual magic and can't move a finger, the old man said to her, while caressing his mustache. All of the disciples encircled the hero, and one of them wondered what a trash could achieve without talent. The other told the others to murder him, while yet another said he was overconfident. Yi Yu exhaled in satisfaction as he realized he had reached the spiritual level. Yi Yu smiled and said quietly, "Thank you very much," as the ice surrounding his body began to melt. The old man was taken aback and questioned what was going on. Miss Yan was taken aback, but for a different reason, when she learned what this strategy was. As this aura was spirit-tied, a fire aura emanated from the protagonist in waves. All of the disciples were stunned. If only those on the spiritual level could produce the spirit tide. The other disciples simply glanced at him, believing that this was impossible. The other would tell the others that he didn't know anything previously. And the last of the ice shattered and dropped off Ye's body. Yu glared angrily at the elderly man as he told him that it was thanks to him that he had finally learned to absorb spirit energy. He assumed a posture with the blade he was carrying and smiled as he said, "and reach spiritual level." And he jumped forward to use his new power to attack. The old man yelled, telling the other disciples to spread out and attack as well. The old man used his own technique to attack the hero, and both attacks connected, and the hero's technique overwhelmed the old man's technique, and he flew back with his disciples as others cried out in pain. And he slammed against the wall, and there was a little explosion behind him. Yu approached him and stared down at him, asking whether he intended to murder him immediately, and he referred to him as an old bastard. The old man sneered at him, telling him he had expended too much energy in the previous battle. Otherwise, he will not be beaten. Yu raised his blade and yelled at him to save his garbage or go to hell. Miss Yan went towards him, shouting at him to stop. No, the old guy closed his eyes, convinced that he was going to die. But then the palace began to quake, and little rocks began to fall. The disciples all yelled in terror as they realized the palace was collapsing. Before the disciples could flee for safety, lightning struck the floor, broke it, and an explosion occurred above them as they glanced up. The disciples yelled to the others that the underground palace was collapsing and that they needed to flee, but this one wasn't paying attention since he was still staring at the lightning. Miss Yan raised her head in surprise, wondering, how can there be thunder? In terror, the disciples all shook and yelled at Lady Shunting. Before any rock could hurt Lady Shunting, Yu appeared and rescued her, carrying her as if she were a princess. As he fled outside with Lady Shunting, the disciples yelled at him to let her go and to catch him. Miss Yan, with a serious expression on her face, questioned Yu why he saved her as he used his abilities to sprint faster. He smiled and informed her that, after all, they were married, and he couldn't just stand by and watch her die. She flushed as she heard this. And then there was a little explosion when Yan Hao's father emerged and urged Yu to stop. In anger, he asked him where his son was. Yan Hao's father approached them with his disciples, gripping his hand in anguish. As lightning flashed above him, the hero jumped and warned them they were too late. The disciples all glanced up in surprise. Yan Hao's father inquired as to what he meant. Yu gave him a grim smile and told him that his dumb kid had committed suicide. Yan Hao's father, who was shocked and outraged, asked, "What shall we do?" That the hero killed his son as he warned him he would destroy him as he prepared an attack, and lightning struck again. The old man simply stood there getting struck by lightning before he could attack. Yu turned around to see what was going on. Yan Hao's father cried silently, dumbfounded, as smoke poured from his body, frying him like a fried chicken. As we can see the disciples and the elderly man looking about, they have recognized that Yan Sheng has been murdered by thunder. The old guy told the others to leave him alone because they needed to save Miss Yan. Yu smiled at him and told him to keep bluffing like that because he deserved the thunder. The lightning above them had worsened as the protagonist dodged it, and he cursed that this was happening right now. The hero was caught, and he fell as he threw Miss Yan away while screaming, and both of them tumbled down with a crash. Yu wailed in agony. The hero had a wicked expression on his face as he realized Miss Yan was on top of him. Miss Yan didn't realize it because she was just telling herself how awful it was. He simply stated how sexy Miss Yan was, with hearts in his eyes. She smacked him as she yelled at him what a jerk he was this time to view her body. Meanwhile, the palace was struck by lightning. The palace was instantly destroyed, and she was instantly in tears, seeing that her family was in danger. She only said softly that everything was over for her family since she was frightened for them. Miss Yan hid behind a rock, sobbing softly for her family. The hero, on the other hand, didn't care because he told her to come with him. how fortunate she is, and how he will never be struck by lightning. The lightning came behind him right after the hero stated that, and it gazed at him ominously, and the protagonist was astonished and afraid now that the lightning was behind him. Yu remained silent and murmured, "Mr. Thunder." Mr. Thunder only smiled darkly, his nasty red eyes flashing. Yu flee while he cursed and begs someone to help him. As he yelled in agony, Mr. Thunder struck him. The hero became dizzy as a result of the lightning. As he pleaded with someone to save him, Miss Yan approached him and asked whether he was okay, as she was worried about him. The hero sat up so quickly that he was shocked that he was perfectly fine and better than he had been before, and Miss Yan was in shock. Lightning danced around him as he checked himself to see whether he was okay. Yu chuckled loudly, declaring that he was certainly the chosen one, as not even the heaven's thunder could shake him. He posed again, and lightning struck him again, but this time it did nothing to him, and he yelled that the lightning could destroy the planet but couldn't damage him. Miss Yan was on edge and yelled for Yu, and he glanced at her with interest. As she grieved in front of him, she pleaded at him to save the Yan family. Miss Yan continued to speak as the hero was dumbfounded, telling him that if he protected the Yan family, she would do everything for him. Miss Yan glanced up at him, still crying, and screamed out his name, but he grasped her hand before she could say more. Yu spoke up and told her that he would not take advantage of her precarious situation, that she had previously helped him greatly, and that it was now his turn. He was running towards the lightning storm. He ran towards the thunderstorm, leaving Miss Yan to grin in the background, happy that Yu was assisting her. The protagonist grinned inside the lightning storm, as he yelled for the lightning to strike him. All of the disciples were taken aback by Yu in the middle of the light thunderstorm, and one of them cursed, "Did this guy go insane?" With the protagonist's spirit force protecting him, all the lightning came towards him and struck him, pushing him back a little. In a state of amazement, the hero asked himself, "What is that?" A gorgeous blonde lady was floating in the air as she used an unusual technique to stop the heaven lightning. She yelled her attack, and a fire dragon flew to the heaven lightning, where her attack struck the lightning. And then there was a tiny explosion. All of the disciples inside the lightning tornado were astonished to see that there was fire surrounding the lightning. The hero was amazed and shocked that someone could unleash such a tremendous strike. She was breathing heavily about it, she was undoubtedly exhausted and had spent a lot of her power. The beautiful blonde zips open her blouse, revealing a stunning view of her watermelons. And the hero promptly exclaimed in his head how attractive the gorgeous blonde was, and blood flowed from his nose, and he had hearts in his eyes from her beauty. And he could get closer to the lovely blonde as he greeted her and respectfully asked if she needed help, while still getting struck by lightning. As the lightning flashed around him, the lovely blonde shocked that the hero was immune to thunder? The hero began to speak because he wanted to tell her his name, as he said, but he was cut off before he could finish. The lovely blonde reasoned that there was nothing more she could do because this was her only option. Yu was astonished and he flushed as she told him to hold her. Suddenly, a large bolt of lightning struck the protagonist back, causing him to look behind him in amazement. When the protagonist realized what was going on, he screamed silently and shouted in his head that he was being used as a shield once more. Yu pushed the gorgeous blonde away from him, and she cursed as she realized the thunder had not ceased, and she flew back in pain. And she fell down with a thud, and Yu yelled out in concern for the beautiful blonde, and as he approached her, he touched her to see if she was okay, and he asked her if she was okay, and all she said was to hug her securely. Yu produced another perverse look as he exclaimed, "This is the first time a girl has made such a request of me," and he did precisely that as he tightened his grip on her, telling her not to worry because he was here to protect her. And when the lightning struck again, Yu grabbed her up and held her like a princess, and fleeing before the lightning could devour them both. That concludes the video for now.
If you did enjoy this video, like, share and subscribe for more, and have a great day.